Welcome to Love Unlimited Church Online. My name is Mark Rodriguez. I'm the pastor of the church, and today we have a great service prepared for you and your family. Our guest speaker today is Jason Pulido. He has a great message that's going to inspire you to draw closer to God. But before we jump into the message, I want to ask you to do a few things. First of all, if you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and like this video and start a watch party. It's a great way so that your friends can see that you're part of this service and people can find Jesus. It happens every single week. Also, if you're watching on Instagram, you can hit the little paper airplane on the bottom of your screen and share the video with your friends and your family on Instagram. And lastly, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and this is for all platforms. Interact with the message. Put amen if God speaks to you. You hear something that you like. You can also reiterate something that the speaker says. And this is a great way for people to know they're not watching church by themselves. All right. And now here's Jason with the message.
Hey guys, my name's Jason and I'm so happy to be sharing with you all today. I'm currently a senior at FIU, and when I started 3 years ago, the first thing that I noticed was how far the classes were from one another. FIU is a humongous campus, and I noticed how far the parking garage was from all of the buildings. And when I first started, I would park my car and I would have to walk like 20 minutes to get from the garage to my class. And then once I was in class, to the next building and to the next building, I would spend half of my day just walking around, walking to class. And it was August when I first started, so it was super hot outside. And I was like, I need to think of something that I can do to get to my classes more efficiently. So I remember I saw all these people riding skateboards around campus, and I thought it was so cool. So I decided to go on Amazon and look for a skateboard. And the cheapest one that I found was a penny board. So it was $20. It was like the super small board that I bought, and I looked up, right when I bought it, I looked up videos on YouTube, how to ride a penny board. So I figured it out in the parking lot in my neighborhood. And eventually, I took it to FIU. And I felt like such a cool kid. Here I am, this freshman at a college campus, riding around on my little penny board. And not only was it super efficient to get to class fast, but I also felt awesome doing it. And if you guys know me, you know that I'm super tall. I'm 6'2". So here I am, this humongous guy riding around on this tiny little board. So one day I was kind of running a little bit late for class. So I was riding a little faster than usual. And I remember it was a hot day. So I had my sunglasses on. I was listening to music on my AirPods, and I was just vibing, going super fast. So I wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden I'm just riding and I fly out off of the board. I'm in the air flying for like a solid 2 seconds, and all of a sudden, bah, I hit the floor super hard, and I break my knee open. I'm bleeding like crazy on my knee. I fell on my face. I busted my lip. It was terrible. And I remember I was so embarrassed because there were people around that saw me, and I scraped my knee so bad, and I had to go to class. So I go to class, and the first thing that happens is I sit down. I'm trying to cover my knee with my shorts so nobody sees it, and that's what happens. And my professor in front of the whole class is like, "Hey Jason, what happened to your knee?" And I had to tell the whole class this story that I was super embarrassed of how I fell off of my penny board. And at that moment, I made the decision. I'm like, I'm quitting. I'm never gonna ride this penny board again, because I was so scared that I would fall and I would be embarrassed again, and I would have to go through that physical and emotional pain again. And I had to come to a realization that I didn't have control over whether or not there was a crack in the sidewalk. All I had control over was whether or not I would pay attention to the floor and actually not try to look cool, but actually try to be safe. And it's hard for us in these moments to distinguish what we do and do not have control over. And I know this is really hard for parents when you're teaching your kids how to drive. These people are always so stressed out. When my parents taught me how to drive, I remember they were so scared, like holding on to the little handle, because they did not trust me. They thought I would kill them, I would break their car. And over time, you would think it starts to get a little better once I've been driving for a couple years. Maybe my parents will start to trust me more, but not at all. I've been driving already for 5 years, and every time my mom is in the car with me driving, she's constantly screaming at me to slow down, to be careful, to look when I'm driving, and to just be safe. And this is so hard for parents because it's hard for them to not have control over the car, and that the child that they knew when they were a baby and they've seen grow up all these years is the person that has their life in their hands. And this also happened to me when I started working out. So when I was a freshman at FIU, I started going to the gym all the time. I was trying to get swole. You see me, I'm a skinny guy. I was trying to get big. I would bench press every day, do curls, pull-ups, push-ups, everything I could to get swole. And I'm this skinny little twig that nothing was changing. I was working out every single day and I just couldn't see the results. I was still skinny and I wasn't getting like this huge guy that I wanted to be. And it was just so hard for me to understand that I didn't have control over whether or not I gained the muscle. All I had control over was whether or not I would keep going to the gym, have that discipline to stay working out every day. And separating what we do and do not have control over is really hard in relationships and friendships. So many times we try to change people for who we want them to be. We don't accept people for who they are, but we want them to be the person that we want. And this happens all the time. Maybe this happens to you with your spouse or with your kids or with your sister, your brother, where you're just trying to change them. But in reality, we need to just accept people for who they are and realize that we're not going to change anybody. But what we can do is we need to love them for who they are. And that difficulty of understanding what we do and do not have control over is very relevant in our relationship with God. It's so easy for us sometimes to get mad at God, to get angry that God is not giving us what we want. And sometimes we treat our relationship with God like a vending machine. We can do the prayer, put in the dollar, press the numbers, and then God will just give us exactly what we want. We try to control every situation in our life. And the main point of this message, and I hope the thing that we can all take away from this, is that all you can do is try your best and let God do the rest. That is all you can do. All you can do is do what you have control over. Instead of worrying about everything, every situation, you just have to trust in God and believe that God will do his part. And there's someone in the Bible that I want to share a story about that had a very tough situation to separate what he did and did not have control over. And there was a guy named Joshua, he was the leader of Israel after Moses died. So Moses was this huge figure in the Bible where he was the one that freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. He was the one that led them through the desert, the parting of the Red Sea. That was all on Moses. And I just think of Joshua, being the next guy up. And he had some pretty big shoes to fill. And if I was Joshua, I would be nervous. I would be scared that I could never be as good as Moses. I can never live up to those expectations. And for me as a younger sibling, I have this all the time where I've always had the same teachers as my sister, the same friends, all the same things. And I'm always scared that, I can never live up to those expectations. I'm sure Joshua had the same thing with Moses times 10. So when he was new as being the leader of Israel, he had a great challenge in front of him. So I want to read with you guys Joshua chapter 6, starting in verse 1, where it says, "Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, Have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in. And Jericho was known as a city in the ancient world for having these impenetrable walls. They had these massive walls that nobody was able to break through. Nobody was able to conquer Jericho because of these walls. And I just imagine God instructing Joshua to march around these walls with his army for 7 days. And I just think sometimes about our church, and I think about our leader, Pastor Mark, and he's always talking about how much he loves Hialeah and how much he's from Hialeah. And I just think, imagine if Pastor Mark told every single person in our church to walk around Hialeah with him, to do laps for 7 days. I would be very confused. I don't know if I would do it, maybe for the first day or so, but I would be so confused if he was instructing us to do this. Just imagine. And I could imagine Joshua in this situation that he was so worried of what people will think of him as a leader. You've just been put into power. You've just been given the reins of the nation that Moses led. And I just think, what was going through Joshua's head? What is the worry, the anxiety that was circling through his head of what people will think about him? And for me, the key takeaway from this story, the main thing that stood out to me is that Joshua did not have control over whether or not the walls fell down. All he could control was whether or not he would obey God. And Joshua made the decision that he was going to do what God commanded him to do. He was going to lead the people in the nation of Israel as God wanted him to. And what really amazes me about this story is not that Joshua walked around the walls with his army for the first day, because it's so easy to do things once. It's easy to get excited about things and initially to do it the first day. But it's that point, that breaking point around day 4 or 5 where, people are starting to get tired. People are starting to question him. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And in that moment, in that breaking point where Joshua decided that he was going to remain faithful to God, he was going to stay walking around the walls as God has commanded him to do, even when he didn't understand why. And let's continue at the end of the story to see what happened. So in Joshua chapter 6, verse 20, it says, "When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted. And at the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys." And let's stop there, because all that Joshua did in this story was try his best and let God do the rest. He didn't try to, jump over the wall or try to break it down, or try to do something, a shortcut to get away, which is what most of us probably would have done. But Joshua knew that if he would do his part, if he did what God commanded him to do, that God will be faithful. And for me in my life, I have a story like Joshua where I was in a situation where I needed to try my best and let God do the rest. And I was filled with anxiety, I was filled with worry, but I had that moment where I needed to trust in God. So for me, I never really liked reading. I never liked reading books. I never liked doing my homework where I would have to do summer reading or anything like that. And I would just always, for all of my school, do the bare minimum to pass the reading classes. Whether it was Googling summaries of the books or asking my friends to tell me something about the book, I would just do the bare minimum in order to pass. And in 7th grade, I was going through a lot, It was the time of my parents' divorce, so I was going through a lot of emotional issues, and I had to take the reading FCAT. And I remember, I just didn't, I tried, but it was so hard for me. I was reading, the pages on this book, and I couldn't understand anything. And I ended up doing really bad. I got a really bad score on the FCAT. So the following year in 8th grade, my school, they pulled me out of my PE class, which, I love PE, I love playing sports. And in 8th grade, they pulled me out and they put me in intensive reading class. And I was so embarrassed. I didn't tell my family, I didn't tell my friends. I remember being in that class and I was the only kid in the whole class that English was their first language. And here I am struggling so much with reading comprehension. And if you fast forward to this summer, I am currently applying to law school. And I needed to take the LSAT, the law school admission test, which is a super hard test, very stressful, and it has a reading comprehension portion. And I just remember spending hours. I was struggling to read. I was trying to learn all these strategies. I was trying to just maybe I could guess correctly or have a method for guessing. And it was so stressful. I remember I was sitting actually in this room where I'm recording this video right now, and I was struggling to study. I was studying every day for 10 hours, and I was just stressed out because I needed to score around 80% on the reading comprehension section, and I was only scoring 50%, 2 weeks before my test. And I came to a realization that, there's no way that I can do this on my own. There's no way that the kid that could barely pass the FCAT in 7th grade that was in intensive reading could now become a lawyer, could now get accepted into these top law schools. And I was so stressed out that I wanted to give up. I wanted to quit. I just wanted to accept that I'm not a good reader, I can't be a lawyer, I just need to move on with my life. And the realization that came to mind was that I don't have control over what score I'm gonna get. I don't have control over whether or not I'm accepted into these law schools. All I can do is try my best and let God do the rest. And I knew that if I do my part, I knew that God will do his. And all I can say is that I've been extremely blessed. I was able to get the score that I needed, and now I've been accepted to 4 of the top law schools in the state. And now I'm in another situation where I'm stuck deciding where I'm gonna go. So please pray for me that I have more wisdom. But what's amazing about my testimony is that I was able to gain the peace of God in my heart once I was able to stop worrying about every situation and just try my best and let God do the rest. And maybe you're here and you're thinking, how do I do this? What can I do so that my teenager that doesn't listen to anything that I say is going to be the person that I want them to be a person of God? Well, one thing to do if you have that situation is to bring your teenager to youth group. But seriously, there's 3 things that we need to do in order to try our best and let God do the rest. So the first thing is to invite God into the process. And this is so hard for me because, as a Hispanic male, I'm taught, in this culture of doing things on your own. Maybe you're listening to this message and you're someone that you struggle with pride. You're like me, you just want to do things on your own, get away with it, and you don't want to ask for help. And, I wanted to study on my own. I wanted to be able to go around and say how smart I was because I got into all these law schools. But I came to that realization that there was no way that I could get the score that I needed without God. And I love it in Matthew 19:26, where it says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And it was impossible for me to get that score that I needed because I'm not good at reading. I never liked reading. I'm never one of these avid readers, but I knew that with God, all things are possible. So the next thing that we can do is do the work. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. And earlier we talked about this vending machine mentality and how we just want to ask for things and it's immediately given to us. But in reality, we need to work at the things that we want with all of our heart. For Joshua, he had to walk around the walls of Jericho for 7 days, no matter how much stress or anxiety maybe was going through his head. And for me, I had to study, 10 hours every day to activate the wisdom and gifting that God had placed inside of me in order to get the score that I needed. And the final step is to trust God's timing. We live in this culture of instant gratification where we want things now. We want things immediately. For me, I always go on YouTube. I'm always watching videos on YouTube. And unfortunately, I don't have YouTube Red. So whenever I click on a video, it always has ads. So it always has these 5-second countdowns. And I'm so quick with it, right? I'm counting down, I'm looking at this 5-second countdown, and immediately when the skip ad button comes up, I click it like so fast because I just want to watch my video. And that's how we are in life. We want things immediately. And it's so hard for us to trust God's timing when God's timing does not align with our own. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And I'm sure Joshua would have preferred to only walk around the walls once. Just, hey, we're going to walk around the walls of Jericho for one day. But God commanded him to do it for 7 days because this was a testing on Joshua's life of his ability and his obedience to trust God's timing. And for me, I had to learn this lesson in sort of an unconventional way. One thing that I've always loved is ramen noodles. And I'm not talking about the bougie ones, the ones that you got for like $15, $20. I'm talking about the cheap ramen noodles that come in the packet and you put the little beef seasoning inside. Those are my favorite because when I was in high school, I would come home from school hungry. I would come home from school ready to eat. And they were so quick and easy to make and delicious that I loved them. And I remember when my mom first taught me how to make them and I would make them every day, I would get so frustrated because I would get home from school and that thing that I was talking about earlier, instant gratification. I just wanted to eat immediately. I would put the water in the pot and on the stove to boil. And I would get so frustrated because I would just be staring at this pot. I would be like, when is the water gonna boil so I could put my noodles in? I would just be waiting for this water to boil, and it would take forever. And I told my mom one day how this was really annoying me because I love my ramen noodles, and it would just take so long for the water to boil that I would get so frustrated. And what my mom responded was one of the best pieces of advice she has ever given me. What she told me was that a watch pot never boils. You just have to put the water in the pot and step away. And this is the best piece of advice because I don't have control over whether or not the water boils. All I have control over is whether or not I put the water in the pot on the stove and, I walk away. And this advice has helped me with my ramen noodles, made me less frustrated, but it's also helped me in so many areas of my life. Because what this is telling me is that all I can do is try my best and let God do the rest. And in our lives, we just need to put the water in the pot and step away. Because we need to stop worrying about all the things going on in our lives. Stop worrying about things that are out of our control, but just do the work and trust that God will provide for us. And imagine what our lives will look like if we no longer got anxious about all these things that we can't control. If we no longer stayed up at night worried about things that were out of our control. Just imagine the peace of mind that we would have if we just started to accept the things that we're given and be grateful. And in this holiday season leading up to Christmas, this is one of the most stressful times of year. I'm stressed right now thinking about what gifts I'm gonna get people, where I'm gonna go for Christmas, in a safe environment. And I just think in every area of our lives, in this season that we're entering, with all this stress, we just need to make that decision that we're going to trust God. And if you want to make that decision to accept Jesus into your life, you can do that today. And when we think of salvation, when we think of accepting Jesus into our lives, the first thing we think of is going to heaven. Once you die, if you've accepted Jesus into your heart, you're going to heaven. And that's something that I believe, and that's something that I say all the time. But when I think of salvation, it's something that's not only after death. Salvation is today. Salvation is tomorrow. When you make that decision to accept Jesus into your heart, you're saved from the anxiety, from the worry that may come your way, because you know that all you can do is try your best and let God do the rest. You're saved today, you're saved tomorrow from anything because you have Jesus in your heart. And if you want to make that decision to accept Jesus into your life right now, I want you to repeat this prayer after me. And wherever you are, and whoever's in the room with you, I want you to repeat it out loud. Read it off of the screen. It says, "Dear God, I come to you today, and I say I'm sorry for the mistakes that I've made, for the sins that I've committed. I give you my life. I give you everything. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jason, for that great message. If you prayed that prayer today, let me tell you something. We want to help you draw closer to God. We want to help you take a couple steps that are going to build you up in your faith as you begin to follow Jesus or maybe recommit your life to Jesus. The way that we can give you this information is by texting the word connect to 786-541-1020. Yeah, that's right. Just text the word connect to 786-541-1020, and we'll send you some information that's going to draw you closer to Jesus today. Also, you may be watching this message and it's a season of Thanksgiving and you want to contribute to the ministry of Love Unlimited. God has been doing some great things in our church. Just this last weekend, we gave Thanksgiving meals to over 200 families, thanks to the generosity of people just like you. And we want to ask you to please continue giving to our ministry. You can just go to loveunlimited.com/give or open the Cash App on your mobile device and put the $ and the word Love Unlimited. Thank you so much for supporting us. And now I want to invite you to worship with the Love Unlimited band.
For I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me, yeah. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God, yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that song the same way that I did. Now I'm gonna ask you to do a few things. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like the video, and share it. Share this video, post it on your Facebook, share it with friends. People find Jesus every week because of someone just like you. We'll see you next time.